Haunted Michigan. Terrifying Tales.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of Haunted Michigan. I'm your host, Meltdown, where every single Monday throughout the month of October, we're going to be talking to some of the specialists as far as the paranormal is concerned throughout our great state. Brian Danhausen's coming up second. We'll tell you about him here in just a little bit. But first is John and Jessica from the What's Up Weirdo podcast. John is known all throughout the paranormal circles with his 32 years experience. We talk about cryptids, lake monsters, even UFOs. As well as his guest, Jessica. She shares some really great stories with us too. Together, they're quite a tandem and quite a duo. And that's what starts this episode of Haunted Michigan, episode 2. John and Jessica, thank you guys so much for joining us, the What's Up Weirdo podcast hosts. And John, 32 years of lecturing and investigating. And Jessica, you tag along and you're a tattoo artist. So where do we begin with this? I don't even know where to start. Jessica, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, John, how's things with you in Royal Oak, born and bred?
Oh, yeah, it's great. I mean, the spooky season is coming, right? This is Christmas time for the weirdos.
Yes, this is your guys' time. There's no question about it. So, John, I just kind of briefly mentioned your history. So for those listening and watching, give us a brief synopsis other than the 32 years. Like, what kind of stuff are you expert at?
Well, I have investigated all claims of anything weird you can imagine. UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, even, Michigan has Bigfoot and dogmen, and we've even had recent Mothman sightings. So
Really?
It really falls under the category of every single thing strange that you can imagine.
Now, the Mothman thing is super interesting. I heard about that just within the last year or something. There's been Mothman sightings here in Michigan. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's being called Mothman, but it's a winged humanoid has been spotted a few times over the past. And so since Mothman is the most popular kind of giant winged humanoid, it's been called like the Michigan Mothman.
And where was that spotted?
All over the state, actually. I've gotten reports from Traverse City, from Sault Ste. Marie, Alpena, all the way down to Lake St. Clair, Grosse Pointe.
No kidding. Wow. And Jessica, so how do you hook up with John and tag along with him all these years?
Oh boy. We've been friends for, I still don't know the number. I don't know when, but we met at Gusseline Alley in Royal Oak. And he scared the shit out of me at first. The very first time we met, he read my palm and told me my dog was going to die. So I'm like, I think I hate this guy. But it got better after that.
And how long ago is this?
Shit, 10, 15 years ago?
Okay,
Yeah,
so it's been a
15 years
while.
ago.
Yeah, you guys have been a while. So yeah, when Jessica, I believe that Jessica, when I put this out on Facebook that I was gonna be doing this project about Haunted Michigan, I think you responded or whatever, and then you said, hey, you got to get John involved because he's the real deal. Am I remembering this correctly?
Probably. Or somebody, I think my friend Greg shouted us out and was like, oh, you're doing a Haunted Michigan thing? Here's the 2 people you got to talk to.
Yeah. And John, you come highly regarded, so I'm looking forward to some great stories. We're already starting off on the right foot with this Mothman thing. Tell me about the dog man. I don't know about that.
Yeah, so starting around the 1980s, there started to be this claim that Michigan had an upright canine, so what is called dogman. And there are reports in Wisconsin and Illinois of what they call dogman, an upright walking canine, almost like a werewolf. And it started to get spotted all throughout Michigan as well. So something way larger than a wolf standing on its hind legs, running through the field, sometimes leaning against fences on its hind legs. So Michigan has this really amazing history of weird cryptids, which are, undiscovered animals, whether they be Bigfoot or not. In the 60s, we had a giant hairy creature near Monroe actually attack a car full of people. And it was down by the Fermi atomic power plant in the 1960s. So, I mean, atomic Bigfoot, dogmen sightings, winged figure sightings in the sky. Michigan is the home of strangeness.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to do this project, because there is a lot of vast wilderness. There's a lot of stories, a lot of tales that come out of this. So, John, have you seen any pictures, video of any of this kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I have hair samples from these dogmen sightings and some of the
Really?
Bigfoot sightings. Sure. And plaster casts of the Bigfoot tracks that have been caught up in like Black River, Michigan, and down near Oscoda. The eastern side of Michigan seems to have a lot more Bigfoot than the western side, but the western side has a lot of the stranger sightings. So like dogmen, and even, some alien stuff starts to happen when you get into the middle and west side of the state.
All right, we'll get into that coming up in a little bit because I know you're into that kind of stuff. Jessica, what kind of stuff have you witnessed or heard about that's strange or kind of unique to Michigan?
While he was just talking about Western Michigan, one of our favorite trips, not that long ago, we went to, there's this place in Holland, Michigan, right above Saugatuck called the Felt Mansion. And they have a lore of these things called the Melon Heads in the forest outside the mansion. And there's different things that they say about how they got there. One of them is that an asylum closed and the little weird children ran into the woods and they live there now. There's another one about like a twisted scientist was doing experiments on them, and then the kids turned on the scientist and ate him and then ran into the woods. So people still to this day see these little shrunken things with giant heads.
Really, John, I see you nodding your head. So you know all about this stuff. I mean, you guys obviously are close and you kind of do this together, but you've heard about all these stories as well.
Oh yeah, the Melon Heads is one that goes back probably to the 1950s or 60s. And again, people have all these different explanations. Are they, children that were experimented upon? Are they aliens? Are they like even closer to like fairies and elves out in the forest? So that rumor has gone around, legend, folklore for, decades and decades. And people still claim to see the Melon Heads out there.
I've never heard of that before. You guys are bringing up some new stuff that I haven't heard yet from all the people I've interviewed, which is why I brought you on here. I want to check out some new and different things. We just talked about UFOs, John. So what's the UFO sightings like here in Michigan?
Michigan has historically, we had the largest UFO sighting in American history. So in 1966, near Dexter, Hillsdale area of Michigan, there was a farmer who saw a UFO. Hundreds of other people started to see it over the course of a few days. Police chased it. It went on for like weeks, and thousands of people claimed to see this UFO, to the point where our congressman at the time, who was Gerald Ford, went on the House and demanded investigation into UFOs. And to this day, if you hear somebody say like a UFO is swamp gas, that was the government's answer for what people in Michigan had been seeing, is that everybody saw swamp gas coming out of the
and what do you think?
I think that they probably saw UFOs. I'm not going to doubt 5,000 people. I mean, maybe one or two people I can find some doubt with. But when you have expert observers and police and just normal people who don't want the stigma of being strange or crazy, they're just saying what they saw, I have to tend to believe they saw an unidentified flying object.
Now, Jessica, are you more into UFOs or paranormal, or where do you land?
I think probably ghosts first, but then I really like cryptids too, especially being in Michigan. And then we were in Wisconsin not too long ago too, and there's the Beast of Bray Road. So we went to Bray Road and took a picture, and it's all sorts of weird stuff.
That's one of the dogmen that they see in Wisconsin.
Okay. And what about in the UP? Because you would think that there'd be a lot of this kind of stuff in the UP as well.
Yeah. So, the great thing about Michigan, not only do we have all of this stuff that's on land, but each of the lakes has multiple hundreds of reports of lake monsters. So, you get up into the UP and Lake Superior, and you start getting like reports of what people up there call like Gitchy, which is our version of Nessie for the Lake Superior. So giant lake monsters. And then again, with UFOs, we had a military plane disappear in 1953 over Lake Superior chasing a UFO, and that plane was never recovered. There was no wreckage, no survivors. It just disappeared, and the pilots were never found.
I think I've vaguely heard that story, but this is an interesting conversation because I haven't talked UFOs or these cryptids with anybody else. And especially the sea monster type things. That's pretty impressive. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it doesn't get talked about that much. I don't know why. Maybe because even in realms of high strangeness, people find certain things too unbelievable. So I get reports all the time about the Detroit River lake monster, which gets called Modo, I think because of the Motor City. But people see Modo, and I can chalk that up to because there are giant sturgeon in the river. And I don't think people are really used to seeing 7 or 8 foot long fish swimming sometimes. But then you start getting the reports of like the necks sticking out of the water and looking a lot more like the Loch Ness Monster than a sturgeon.
Now, how often do you guys go on these? Do you guys go on these ghost hunts or UFO or conventions, all stuff together? Jessica, you guys kind of hang? Are you guys like a team?
Yeah, we were at just this past weekend, like 2 days ago, we were at the Michigan UFO convention. Last month was the Michigan Paracon, which is in its like 12th year. That's like one of the biggest ones in the country. Where else have we been? We've been everywhere.
Yeah, usually every weekend almost. We go somewhere like I'll be in Nebraska next week. The weekend after that, I'm in Tennessee. The weekend after that, I'm in Wisconsin. The weekend after that, I'm back in Michigan. So yeah, I mean, there's something, especially now in October, but even when we have just, downtime, like let's jump in the car and go and do something spooky. Let's go and see a spooky road, or let's go to an allegedly haunted house.
So, okay, well, let me put this question to both of you guys. Where do you think are some of the scariest areas in Michigan? I'll start with you, Jessica.
Oh gosh, while my dog's jumping on my back. I was thinking today, I was like trying to make notes for today, and I realized there's quite a few places. I used to work at a tattoo shop in Ypsi called Depot Town Tattoo. It's haunted. I saw a full body apparition there twice. He was in the basement. He had on like blue coveralls. There was also what they thought was a little kid ghost would turn on the water at night, and then they would come in and the bathroom of the shop would be flooded. One of the times when I was checking out downstairs, tattoo stools are like rolly and they make like a certain noise. So I was downstairs checking out. I'm the only one in the shop, and I heard one of the stools like roll across the whole freaking shop. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna leave now. So Depot Town Tattoo is haunted. There's the Ypsilanti Firehouse Museum. Did you do that?
Yeah, I did. Yep.
Yeah.
What did you think, John?
Ypsi is a weird place. It's got a lot of old buildings. I mean, that's one of the good things about Michigan is we've got a lot of weird old land, and a lot of weird stuff has happened here. Ypsi, I think, is a pretty haunted place. But I tell people in my lectures, if people do have the potential for becoming ghosts, there have been approximately 100 billion deaths on this planet. If half of them became ghosts, that's 50 billion ghosts on the planet right now. And if you break that down to habitable land mass, then you get about 11 ghosts per acre of habitable land, right? Mm-hmm. So if anywhere is haunted, everywhere is haunted. I think Michigan gets a little bit stranger because something I talk about at my lectures, you were talking about the UP earlier. We have what's called the humongous fungus underneath the Upper Peninsula. Have you ever heard about that?
No.
Okay, so we have a giant mushroom that actually is so big it's underneath the Upper Peninsula and reaches down into the Lower Peninsula. It's underneath the lake. And so I have this very strange kind of joking concept that maybe everybody in Michigan is kind of microdosed, and that's why this state is so strange.
Yeah, that could be. So John, I'll ask you the same question. So, I mean, she mentioned Ypsilanti. You're talking about the UP. Is there any other places like not just specific places, but like areas in Michigan that really kind of bring out the spirits?
Yeah, so I think with haunted locations, especially for me, I mean, obviously I get a lot of reports from Detroit, all over Indian Village, even just the major downtown area. There's so much just energy and emotion in Detroit that I feel like that feeds kind of hauntings that happens there. So Detroit is a great place to start. And then as you kind of get out into the areas, I've found that I got a ton of reports from kind of the Pier area up near Lake Orion. And, I can only assume that so as you get up closer to the Thumb, you start getting some really, really weird tales of ghosts and entities up there in the Thumb area. And with Michigan, I also try and keep in mind like which areas have been inhabited the longest, not just by Europeans, but by the original inhabitants of Michigan. And I up in the Thumb area, that's where you have the Sanilac petroglyphs, and we actually know that Native American tribes were living up there for a long time. So I feel like the older the land is with its history, the more kind of haunting and spiritual energy it has attached to it.
Now I'm going to talk to somebody tomorrow, I do believe, about the Bruce Mansion. You're obviously familiar with that, Jessica? What do you think about that? You're shaking your head.
Oh, that's DPX, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to those guys. Yeah.
I've been there, but I didn't get to go inside. But I saw it from the outside. I got to go in there still.
Yeah, John, what are your thoughts on that place?
Yeah, it's one of those locations where, it's got a good, weird history to it. And I really do feel like when you go to investigate places like Bruce, or even you go to the Whitney downtown, like these places that have notorious histories, when you go in there with an open mind and you want to see something or have an experience, whatever is in that building recognizes you. and we'll give you an experience. But I think if it catches you thinking like, no, this is fake and I don't believe in any of this stuff, sometimes it'll act in one of two ways. Sometimes it won't give you anything, or it'll give you something so outrageous you just can't believe it.
Yeah, I could see that happening. Yeah. So you mentioned the Whitney, and other people have talked about the Whitney as well. A lot of people bring that up. So that place seems to be in consensus that there is something there.
Yeah, for sure. I used to have for years and years and years, I had friends who worked as chefs and cooks in the kitchen. And I don't know if they still do this, but they used to every morning, they would make one of the daily specials and take it upstairs and leave it for the ghosts of the Whitney to kind of keep them calm and relaxed. I mean, obviously you went up afterward at night and nothing was eaten, but just as a kind of symbolic way to keep the ghosts like, we know you're here. Here's a daily special. Just, don't bother the guests.
I've heard that. Have you been in there, Jessica?
I have I was just there recently, but I've been there before that too. I found that the creepiest area, the place where I felt the most, there's the ghost bar upstairs. The women's bathroom on the 3rd floor in the ghost bar has vibes big time. And there's like a lounge in there. So you don't have to like be in the bathroom part, but just sit in the lounge. And there's like a weird painting in there. I don't know, it's creepy. And then I was going to say too, John King Books downtown is really haunted too.
Yeah, that's the place right off the lodge or something, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and like you were saying, a lot of older buildings, John, a lot of people have been there for many years.
For sure. And, in Detroit, unfortunately, a lot of our older buildings don't exist anymore. They've been torn down or burned, just the history of Detroit being as old as it is. And it almost as if the spirits, entities, ghosts, whatever you want to call them, in those other buildings have to look around and find a new place to hang out. And so they all end up in like the same places. So whether or not the Whitney started off with only one ghost, now it seems like there's a half dozen or maybe a dozen more in there. And it's like they're wandering the neighborhood going, oh, that's an old building. That's from when I was. I'll go in there and hang out for a while.
Now, I have talked with people that said that there's even some places that they've been to that are newer developments that have spirits. Have you run across that, John?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the stuff that's torn down all the time. When I was talking about Lapeer, one of the most haunted places that I know was kind of off just between Lake Orion and Oxford. And it was this stretch of forest that had an old barn, and there was a woman in blue that was seen walking around the barn. And I got reports about that for years and years. Well, if you go out there now, there's a condo development, right? And so just because the barn is gone doesn't mean that the entity that was haunting the barn is gone. And so when I started getting calls and emails from people who live in that condo complex saying, I'm seeing this blue figure walking the hallways, like, new places can be just as haunted as old places.
Yeah. What are some of the craziest experiences you've experienced, Jessica, yourself personally? You talked a little bit about the tattoo place in Depot Town there. Anything else? Have you ever been touched or anything like that?
Thankfully, no. There was a place that we investigated in Kentucky called the Benton Farmhouse. I saw 4 different ghosts there, like full body apparitions. One was a lady, and the other 3 were like a head and shoulders behind me. It's a long story, but that place is crazy. I'm trying to think. I was thinking too earlier, Tenney, that we investigated that Willis house, and then that Boneheads barbecue in Willis is haunted too.
Yeah, I was just there a couple of weeks ago. You might have saw it on my socials, but
Really?
yeah, I went there and I got to go back because I guess they do it up right a couple weeks before Halloween, so I got to go back there. But A, I love that place. B, I love the country, and I love just the open space out there. And they also said that somebody messaged me about the Willis Hotel. You know about that, Jessica?
That might be the place. It's called the Willis House Inn, I think, or the Willis Inn. That might be the same place that we investigated.
Yeah, you know about that.
Yeah, I think it's a B&B now.
Yeah. So, John,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that place down in Willis?
Yeah, when I was there, when we were investigating, it was super crazy. There were a lot of people catching recorded voices and seeing movement. So yeah, I mean, the thing is, a lot of times with the way that ghosts and ghost hunting is portrayed in popular media, you watch a ghost hunting show or something like that, it's 44 minutes long, and someone will go to a location and a door will slam, they'll get a voice on a recording, floors will squeak, and people are like, oh, that place is super haunted. But the reality is that's shot over 6 days and edited down into 44 minutes. So when you go to a location for one night, if you're there for one night and you hear voices and a squeak, like that place is really haunted. If it's happening all at one time, you're really encountering something. And that happened when we were at Willis.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, did you stay there for overnight?
We were there for a long time, but we weren't there overnight.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that ghosts are really watching the clock to figure out when to be spooky. I know it's easier to investigate at night because the outside environmental noise is a lot quieter, right? There's not as much traffic, that people aren't mowing their lawns. So you're a little more hypersensitive to sounds. But, during the pandemic, I started getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails from people who, for the first time, were spending time inside of their house during the day and noticing or thinking that their house was haunted. And I said, well, if a house is haunted, it's not just haunted at night, it's haunted during the day. And the ghosts, if they're in your house, aren't probably used to you being there all day long.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. But yeah, during the pandemic, when people had other things to do or time to kill or whatever, I guess they had a little bit more time, huh?
Yeah, listening to their house creak and moan and wondering, what was that strange sound I just heard upstairs? And then they started investigating their property. They had free time, right? And then they're all of a sudden, then people realize that, Jessica and I were talking about this probably a couple of weeks ago before, and I don't think a lot of people really keep this in their minds. I have to because of what I do, but hospitals have only been around for about 125 years. Doctors used to practice out of their houses, and we have a lot of houses in Michigan that are over 125 years old that doctors probably practiced out of, which means that if your house was where a doctor practiced, in your backyard, you probably have what's called a body pit, where they would throw the discarded body parts. It's one of those things, but I've found many of them when I've done investigations.
Really? Jessica, what do you think when John finds body pits?
I mean, we think my house is 100 years old, I think, next year. I live in Royal Oak, too. And there's a place down the street from us called the Orson Star House that we've investigated a few times, one of the oldest places around here. And Tenney discovered from researching recently that my property is on Orson Star's old property. So now we're like, what do I have here?
Yeah, does she have a body pit in her backyard? You never know.
Well, maybe the Royal Oak Township will let you, or Royal Oak, whatever, will let you dig it up. See if they do that.
Well, here's the thing, too, and I must tell this to anybody who listens. If you do go digging around your backyard and you find a body pit, it seems like that might be kind of gross Halloween fun, maybe in some way or another, but you have to call the cops because then your backyard becomes a crime scene until they can come out and determine that those body parts have been there for a long time.
Yeah. Speaking of the police, I don't know, crazy story just popped into my head. Do the cops ever call you if something crazy happens? Have you ever had a call? Jessica, you're shaking your head. Go ahead.
They call him about stuff all the time. Detroit cops do.
Is that right?
Yeah, we're not supposed to talk about it, but since you asked, I don't have any secrets. I never signed an NDA with them or anything.
Well, you don't gotta get specific, but I mean, they do call you, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. The last time, the one that really sticks out in my mind was a few years ago. They found a kind of pentagram and a sacrifice behind Russell Street in downtown. And so they called me like 5:30 in the morning and started asking me about, what would this look like if it's Satan worshipers? And do I think, that Royal Oak has a satanic cult in it? And so I kind of walked them through the process of what would happen if it was a satanic ritual. And it really wasn't. It was probably some kids who had watched a horror movie and tried to remake the horror movie.
So would you consider yourself an expert or at least knowledgeable in the occult?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I met my first witch when I was like 15. Her name was Marion Kuklo. She was Michigan's Green Witch. She used to write for newspapers all across Michigan. And she was the first one who kind of introduced me to magic and witchcraft and the occult. And yeah, I mean, that's a whole separate weird ride, but it's pretty funny. Really quickly, just to explain to your listeners who might not know this. So when the Satanic Temple opened in Detroit, I think it's closed now, but it was open for a few years. We had one. I got invited to it, and I went in for their opening night rituals and ceremonies.
And what year are we talking about here?
Probably 2016, I think.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's okay. Okay. So,
yeah, pretty recently.
Yeah.
And so, they had, someone dumping Kool-Aid on themselves like it was blood, and music and, just weird like BDSM rooms going on. And so I started smoking a cigarette. And this guy in a big black cloak and hood comes over to me and he says, it's illegal to smoke inside the Satanic Temple. And I was like, what? And so I got kicked out of the Satanic Temple for smoking. So the Satanists aren't as crazy as people would think they are. They're the most law-abiding Satanists we've probably ever seen.
Oh yeah, or I was gonna say, yeah, that's they don't break the rules in the House of Satan, I suppose.
Right?
Did you go down there, Jessica? Did you see that?
No, but that just reminded me of like because a lot of Detroit people always ask, where can I road trip to? What's a good day trip? Well, one of our favorite places is in Cleveland. So it's only like a 3-hour drive. They have a witchcraft museum. It's called the Buckland Witchcraft Museum. That's a great trip. And then a little bit past that is a place called Lilydale, which is a spiritualist community. So every house on the property houses a psychic, and you can walk up to the houses and get a reading. There's meditation areas. There's a pet meditation area. There's
a fairy garden.
Yeah, there's a fairy garden.
And so that's just like a 5 or 6 hour drive from Detroit.
Yeah.
So, John, I asked Jessica about this. I'll ask you. Have you had like experiences where you've been touched or different things like that?
Yeah, over the past 32 years, some pretty wild stuff. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been touched or scratched.
Really, you've been scratched? Have you have they broken blood?
Oh yeah, down my back. I had
Really?
one scratch me from the very kind of right under where my hairline starts on the back of my head, all the way down to my waist on my back, right down my spine. And it just like all of a sudden I felt hot, and I could feel I almost felt just heat on my spine, and lifted up my shirt, and the appearance of like nails marks just appeared on my back, like they just came out of nowhere.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, stuff like that has happened in 1999. After 32 years, I can't even like really begin to get into the 1999. Like the Archdiocese of Detroit asked me to sit in on an exorcism that happened in northern Michigan. So I sat in on an exorcism that was, sponsored by the Holy See, by the Vatican. That was wild, and would be a whole long episode in and of itself. But yeah. Lots of experiences, lots of voices, lots of touches, pushes, scratches. 32 years. The ghosts know I'm out there.
Jessica, we talked about the areas that, you feel like are haunted. Give me specific places. We talked about the Whitney. You talked about Depot Town. Is there any specific place or building that really you think is strong with spirits?
I was thinking of 2 earlier in the UP because I knew the UP would come up. We were at the Valley Camp ship recently, which you can tour. It's a museum, and you investigated for a TV show that we can't talk about.
Yep.
And then the Mission Point Resort on Mackinac Island, we did investigating there too. Where else is there in the UP, Tenny?
No, I think that those, like for people in Michigan, if you want to take a good kind of spooky trip, the Valley Camp and Mission Point on Mackinac Island are 2 great spots to start off. Those places are super active, highly charged, plus they're historical and informational, and they're all within like a 5-hour drive of Detroit.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, is there anything you guys want to plug as we wrap things up here? Do you have anything coming up? I know, John, you said you got a bunch of seminars and whatnot coming up. Anything like that you want to plug or mention?
Yeah, Jessica and I are doing like a What's Up Weirdo Halloween hangover show at Stash in Detroit on November 4th. And I think that's at 8 o'clock, Jessica?
Yeah, Stash International and Eastern Market. It'll probably start at like 8. Are we going to say who's going to be there or no? Yeah?
Yeah, we can. Our special guest is, I don't know if any of your listeners or you have ever watched the X-Files, but there was these guys on the X-Files called the Lone Gunmen. And one of them is Dean Haglund, so he's going to be our special guest at that event on November 4th.
That's like a scoop. We haven't told anybody that.
Yeah. And then for my events and stuff, if people go to weirdlectures.com, I have an events page, and those are all the places I'll be for the rest of the year.
Weirdlectures.com. Okay, we'll make sure to give that a shout. Well, I really appreciate your guys' time. I was looking forward to talking to both of you guys. What's Up Weirdo, the podcast. And thank you guys so much for your time and for helping us out in this project. And, we appreciate anything I can do for you. Just reach out to me.
Are you going to do anything spooky for Halloween?
Well, that's a ways away yet, but I'm sure I'll be doing something. I haven't figured out anything.
It's now. The time is now. I
haven't watched a lot of haunted, scary movies. I saw Barbarian. I saw Pearl already.
Yeah.
I know you talked about Barbarian. You saw that. I couldn't believe it was. It takes place here in Detroit, so that was kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah, we were saying on the podcast, I'm like, there was a couple jokes in Barbarian that are only going to be funny if you live in Detroit. Like people
Exactly.
in other cities wouldn't have got the chuckle about the area and the cops, whatever else.
Yeah, that was a great movie. So yeah, I'm in the middle of watching Dahmer, and also I started watching The Munsters this morning. So I got to finish that, even though that's a little bit, that's a little bit younger crowd, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Wait,
sure.
the new one that dropped already?
yeah, new one came out today as we record this. Yeah, so well, thank you guys so much for your time. Happy haunting, and thank you for the help.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having us.
Up next for more in Michigan, it's Brian Danhausen. He talks about being scratched. He talks about reading tarot cards. Well, kind of, sort of. He paints them for people. Some haunted places in and around the Royal Oak area. And oh yeah, his famous son. We'll talk about that as well. It's Brian Danhausen. He's up next on Haunted Michigan.
Brian Danhausen from Warren. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk with us today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So first, before we start, give everybody like a little bit of a rundown on the credentials you have as far as the paranormal world is concerned.
So I have been kind of dealing with the paranormal my whole life, being empathic medium, which led me into doing readings through paintings, which a lot of people know me for in the community around here.
Explain that for a second.
So I'd be like reading tarot cards per se, or getting a psychic reading, but I paint it. I paint the reading, and then when I'm done painting, I like turn around and explain it. It's something more like I don't know if you can see that.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I know what all the symbols and the things represent. So I go through and explain what the painting represents, and then we kind of open up for the reading. Because I always tell them that's the safe point. Once I've explained it, it's not like if we talk about it, I can go back and repaint the painting. It's already done.
Okay.
So it's a little bit different. People dig it, I think.
Yeah. So you've also written some books. Into the Afterlife is one of them. That's a
Yeah.
paranormal investigative book.
Yeah, that's kind of when when I first started off actually investigating, I kind of kept memoirs on little scraps of paper. I kind of just put them all together through different investigations and put the book together.
So
I've been running. I run a team into the Afterlife Paranormal. I've been running that for about 13 years now.
oh, really? Okay. And that's located right here in Michigan.
Yes.
All right. So we're talking basically about the haunting of Michigan and different things around the state. So give me
Right.
some of your experiences around the state.
Well, we used to host two locations in Royal Oak. We used to host the Orson Star House, and then we hosted the Northwood Firehouse, which is at like 13 Mile. They're both kind of right around the block from each other, which is kind of weird. Uh, both of them we've had experiences. We were doing tours there for probably about 10 years on both locations, give or take. Well, I guess we start with the firehouse. Well, we would bring other teams out or open to the public kind of tours, and we would give them the history, give them the haunted stuff that's happened to us, and kind of let them go at it. And then we'd investigate with them if they wanted or not. Like in a case of the firehouse, probably the strangest thing that happened to me was, I mean, we had been there several times, and we had a paranormal group out, and I guess they're upstairs or something. But one of them came in through the door, went to the basement. He thought his team was in the basement. He comes out all freaked out, and me and my friend Stephanie were standing there, and we're like, well, what's going on? He goes, I went down there, and I thought someone was down there, but there was no one down there. As I come up the stairs, I turned around, something was standing at the bottom of the stairs. So I turned to Stephanie, I'm like, let's go. If something's happened, let's go down there. Of course, we had no equipment, whatever. We were just going down to experience it. Uh, so we go down into a room where we had rocks thrown at us before. That was from a previous investigation where we caught female voices on EVPs and all kinds of stuff. But we get down there, and Stephanie used to ask me about opening as a medium, and connecting with that other side. So I said, well, let's open and see what comes about. And you gotta think, Beaumont's kind of right down the street from there.
Yeah.
So I think kind of things just kind of gather as you're inviting things in and opening up. Not necessarily have to be at that location, but things come around. But I kind of opened up, and this is where it's gonna get kind of weird. I kind of lost myself. I was standing there and I couldn't move. I got, that chill you get down your spine.
Yeah.
I got that, but it never went away. I couldn't move. I was trying to lift my flashlight up to look at my own face, which is weird because it felt like something was off, and I was like off to the side of myself. And all of a sudden, it snapped out because I tried to walk away as well. I couldn't move. I call it getting jumped from being open, but I kind of fell back. It went away, and then my friend Stephanie was standing there. She's like, "What's going on?" And she goes, "Oh my God!" She has her footsteps running out of the room into the staircase. I didn't hear it because I was all kind of discombobulated. I was kind of out of it. So I didn't hear the footsteps, but sure footsteps. I kind of explained to her what was going on, and I'll tell you what, it took me about 6 or 7 months before I went back to that location.
Really?
Yeah, even though I'd been there dozens and dozens of times doing tours, being open like that and feeling like something got kind of in you or trying to push you out was very odd to me, and it was just something I didn't like to experience.
Would you say that's your biggest experience you've had?
Well, I had picked up something in Southfield. We were doing a client case, and it was a couple who had come over from Jamaica, and they said that their friend had sent them over with something. So we went there to investigate, and I kept seeing this tall black thing, and we had cleansed it a few times.
Wait a second, hold on, back up. You saw it yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
But then I had opened myself, and after we had cleansed the house, I kind of felt like it attached to me.
Wait, hold on, back up for 1 second. You keep saying you keep saying you open yourself. So explain that, because I haven't heard that phrase yet.
So when I'm doing readings or going into investigation, I try to open myself as a medium.
Okay.
When I'm not doing investigation, I try to shut myself down so I'm not going crazy like all the time, because it's a very odd thing to have going on. Like for instance, when I open, it's visualization, right? In my mind, there's a old red curtain. I open up. There's a locked cemetery gate. I kind of give them how I want to do this. I open the gate, and that's where I go to meet these other people on the other side. When I'm done, I push a white light through. I close it, lock it, and close my mind.
Oh man. All right. I'm glad you're doing this and I'm not. So go ahead. You're in Southfield and you see this big black whatever.
Right. And then all of a sudden, we got out of the house. They were fine. I actually didn't end up hearing from them again. And then I started having these like really horrible nightmares with this thing in the nightmares. And then I was sleeping on my couch one night, and something was on top of me, like clawing my eyes. And I had woken up, and my eyes were like burning and watering. Yeah, this weird stuff was going on. I actually had my friend, who's a high priestess, who's a witch, to help me cleanse myself and help me get rid of this thing that was attached to me.
Wow. So how long was it attached?
You know what? I thought I was cocky, and I thought, oh, I got rid of it, and I didn't care. And then it just started getting worse and worse. It was playing in my depression. I said the nightmares were constant, all the time, and it was like brutal kind of death nightmares. The attacks in the sleep. Finally, I just couldn't take it anymore. And, I asked her, takes to go over there, and we, I would join in their coven circles and stuff like that. And I asked her, can you help me? And she helped me get rid of it. So, very weird.
That is strange. So you've been all around the state?
Yeah, we've been all over the place.
Yeah. What other places are have a lot of activity, in your opinion?
We used to do a farmhouse out in Metamora. The whole Metamora area, even the Blood Road, has like history of like satanic worshipers in the woods and sacrifice, and it's just a whole weird thing. There's a Crybaby Bridge out there, which is actually like a legend in every state. Every state almost has a Crybaby Bridge.
Right.
And all the stories kind of vary, but we've had activity out there. We've caught like photos and stuff of various things. Me and my one friend were chasing something around the woods. I'm not saying what it was, but it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. We're in the woods in a dirt road trying to chase this thing around, trying to find it. But it could be an animal. I don't
know. Maybe you guys had too many cocktails that night. Who knows?
No. Man, we've been up to Oh my gosh, what's the name of the place? We've been to the Simpson Hospital. Like I said, we've been just all over, man. There was an old mansion. I'm trying to think of the city now. I'm drawing a blank. This is one of our first investigations where Al Capone would stop on his liquor runs from Chicago.
Mm.
That was kind of a stop for him, and then he would.
So maybe on the west side.
Yeah, it was like northwest.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on the name. Like I said, it's been like 15 years. But,
Yeah. How many investigations do you think you've done in this time?
well, we were running strong for a while. We were doing about one every other weekend for, at the time, I'd say about 8 years. Especially around, it was weird around Christmas time. You would think, Halloween being it's the spooky season, but it always seemed to shift over to the more Christmas times. We were getting house calls for people to come out to their homes to investigate. They were having more activity,
Really?
which was interesting.
Yeah, and you were getting activity from them as well?
Oh yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's weird when I talk about like the medium stuff, because when we started, we were all about the equipment and scientific method and trying to prove something that no one's gonna believe anyways. I always say you could have a video of a full body apparition walking through a room, but if you weren't there, it doesn't matter. You could put it on the internet, everyone's gonna dispute it. So now I just kind of, I mean, we still help people and do whatever, but it's more for myself now in that aspect. And you got to think, well, what are we dealing with, and why not bring in some of the more like psychic type of stuff or metaphysical type of stuff? Because what are we dealing with?
Mm. Yeah.
So we take kind of the equipment, and then we would back up the experiences with the equipment, and
Yeah, and people can look you up, and you can come to their house if they're having sort of issues.
right, yep.
So I asked you about areas and stuff, but what about specific places? You mentioned the firehouse and stuff in Royal Oak. Is there any other places you've been? You mentioned the hospital too, which I've had other people tell me about as well.
Right. We used to go down to Fort Wayne in Detroit. They used to have tours down there, and
Right.
we did the world's biggest coast hunt down there with a bunch of teams in Michigan. And the activity down there, one summer we went to every single tour they had. So we were investigating down there all the time, every summer, multiple times a summer. The activity there was phenomenal. It's funny because I had picked up a little girl out there, and I was talking to a little girl, and I caught female EVPs. And John Zappis and his daughter and them and went out there to shoot a haunted collector. And then they ran, and he'll tell you this. They ran with the whole Detroit on Fire storyline, but they had caught female EVPs, like girl EVPs, and his daughter had saw the little girl that I saw. I sketched her out to be an artist and all.
Stop for 1 second. Hang on. You saw this girl in Fort Wayne?
Fort Wayne, yes.
Yeah. So you saw a little girl.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead.
But what I did was I was with Stephanie. I said, hey, go ask her to describe the girl. So she wrote it down, and then I took my book and took it over there and drew the drawing. It was like the exact same descriptions. I like to verify myself because I always feel like I'm crazy.
So how many apparitions have you seen?
I have seen a lot, because when I do readings for people, a lot of times past loved ones will come through in the readings, and I paint them. And sometimes they'll give me very specific details, like facial details. And then someone will like show me a picture, and it's like, oh my gosh, it blows my mind.
Yeah, no doubt. Wow, that's crazy. So
Right.
have you ever been...
Honestly, it doesn't happen like that all the time, but a lot of times it will be very specific details for them, because I don't know what I'm really painting. I just paint what I see in my head.
Right.
So
have you ever been touched?
Yes. We were at Dundee Mill in Dundee, and we were down in the basement, and we didn't know at the time, but when we listened back to the recorders, we had picked up a female voice. But I was sitting down there with another investigator of mine, and I said, I'm picking up a female, and she's getting agitated. I said, she keeps telling me we don't know what really happened, to that effect. And all of a sudden, I got a burning on my back. And I jumped off of the metal chair, and I called Paul over. and he's looking on me for bugs, debris, something that might have fell. But then there was 3 scratches across the top of my back, where she had kind of poked me, scratched me. I don't know.
You had actual physical scratches?
Yes.
You're
Yep.
the second person to tell me about that same kind of instance with the burning and stuff.
Yeah, it did. It did. It felt like a sharp nail just going right into my back. It didn't feel like a scratch. It felt like a poke, but then there was 3 scratches. So it was like a burning of a scratch. It was like a hot needle went into the center of my back. And then when he pulled my shirt down to see if there were spiders or something, there was the 3 scratches.
How long ago was this?
Ooh, that was after that was before I wrote my first book. So that was probably about 12 years ago.
And what does your book entail? Is it just stories from Michigan or from all over the place?
It goes from all over the place. There's a lot of the cases that we did in Michigan. But then there was like Waverly Hills and some other places that we went, like in Ohio, the Ohio State Reformatory, the prison. We used to go down there every summer. Yeah, all over. It kind of starts out too with some, theories on stuff. Because for me, no one in this field is an expert on anything. Everything is based off theory.
Right.
So I can have my experiences and what I've picked in evidence, and I can have a theory of what's going on, but I can't tell you 100% for sure. You could get a voice on a record of a little girl, but you can't tell me 100% that's a little girl. It could be something mimicking, and that's where you got to kind of be cautious, So people say, oh, I'm an expert on this, expert on that, and when I do my lectures, I talk about this. You can't be an expert on something you don't fully understand.
Does anybody understand it?
No. That's what I say. Everything's theory.
Yeah.
You can have your theories. Oh, I think this might, let's say you go to a client house and you take their experiences, you collect evidence, you look at the history, you try to find, what's been going on there. You say, this is what I think is happening, how I think we can help you. But I never guarantee anything because you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody else said the same thing to me, that you had not to call them experts. And that's it's kind of an interesting thing. So you said you've had clients all across Michigan. You mentioned the one in Southfield. Give me a couple other instances that were kind of pretty wild.
We did one down in River Rouge, and this was interesting. They were a highly, highly religious family, and we had two recorders going, one at either end of the basement, and we had a spirit box going, which didn't pick nothing up but the radio static, and they were scared to death. And the voice said, I am the devil. Which I don't believe in none of that, but to me, like when I explained it to him, because only one recorder picked it up, which was interesting. And it was the one in the back of the room. It wasn't the one up by the box that was going. And how I explained it was that they're high religious. I said, what would be the scariest thing for you to get out of the house? The devil.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever was in there, I think was just taunting them and trying to scare them out of the house. To each their own on their beliefs. That's fine, but to me, because I follow more of the pagan, I'm like a witch. So for me, that's a different whole pantheon of gods that the Christian,
Yeah.
Which, like I said, I have respect for everyone's beliefs. You do what you want, but for me, it just seemed kind of odd to be the devil, but yet the family was super religious and terrified of that. So what better way to get them out of the house?
So were you able to get this spirit out?
We did do a cleansing, because we offer like house cleansing and stuff. Again, nothing guaranteed, but we, do what we think will work. Because again, on the same lines, who are we to make up a set of rules on a plane of existence we don't understand?
Yeah.
I know everything's intent. Oh, well, sage this, sage that, but who came up with that? Who said that works? It's just intent,
Mm-hmm.
It's all kind of weird.
Well, it is all kind of weird. That's why I'm talking to all you guys.
Right.
Trying to figure it out. So do you have a website or anything you want to plug that's coming up?
No, we just have our Facebook page and the Afterlife Paranormal. We do our podcast, The Paranormal Pop. We do it on 2 Facebook Live once a month.
And who are some of your guests? Like, without name specific names, but what do these people do?
Well, we've had some of the paranormal celebrities on.
Oh, really? Okay.
Katrina Weedman. We had Grant from Ghost Hunters. But we also do pop culture. So we had Jim Ballant, who worked on Catwoman in the comic books and now does Tarot Witch of the Black Rose. We had Pinhead on. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
The actor. I'm John. Oh my god, I'm going to blank on his name. It was the one from Judgment.
Yeah.
I met him too. Oh my, I'm bad with names. But what we do is we take pop culture and we do paranormal, so we're not stuck on one particular topic. And like when I talked to Jim Ballard and Holly Golightly, after we talked about the comic and the Catwoman and all that, then he's like, well, tell them about the samurai ghost that she had saw. So everyone's always got a story. He used to work in a graveyard.
Oh, really?
That's how he came up with some of his characters for his comic book. So everyone's always got a story. We used to, wear a shirt in the grocery store. I'm like, oh my god, let me tell you about this. We were crossing the border to Canada to go do a convention. And he said, what are you guys doing there? And we're like, oh, we're going to the Rose City Paranormal Con. He's like, oh my god, I used to be a police officer. And he had this whole thing where he saw his dead partner in the car with him. We were like, he's like, don't worry about the people behind you. Let me finish my story.
That's so funny you mentioned that. Corey Taylor from Slipknot.
Yes.
He put out a book a few years back about the paranormal. I started telling him about an experience I had, and the whole thing. And he's like, everyone has a story.
Right. I actually gave him a copy of my book at Astronomicon. So my son is Danhausen, the wrestler in AEW.
Oh, that's your son? I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And he was friends with Corey Taylor, but he had never met him. So he introduced me at Astronomicon. And then I went and talked to him, I gave him my books, and it was cool to get to meet him because I knew he had did an interview with my son and Steve from Ghost Hunters, and he talked about all the paranormal stuff.
Did you see the interview I did with them there at Astronomicon?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I did like a 45-minute, hour-long interview with them in front of in one of the rooms there.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll have to check that on YouTube or something.
I don't know if it's on YouTube or not. I think that might be a one and done, but I've interviewed Corey a bunch of times. I didn't realize your son was okay. I thought you had the shirt on. I thought you were just playing with me, but yeah, there you go. There it is right there. No kidding.
Yeah, no, he's my son.
Yeah, what does he think about what you do?
You know what? He likes it. His wife is really into it. Lauren. He like I don't think he really experienced. One night he was here when he was a little bit younger, and he was at the microwave. And he thought he heard his mom call him, and he turned around and no one was there. I don't want to give too much away from him, but he has talked to me about like the sleep paralysis thing where he felt like someone was holding him down. I always said I don't think my house is haunted, but I think knowing what I do, and my daughter sees them, that they kind of float through the house, not to stay, but kind of like a revolving door type of thing. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's so funny. I didn't realize that was your son. He actually came through the radio station here a few months back.
Yeah, he was on David Chuck the Freak.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I caught the end of that.
Well, Brian, it's really been great talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us and your cool room there. I have to come over sometime and whoop you in Gallica or something.
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, thank you so much, and thanks for taking part in this.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And there it is, Haunted Michigan, Episode 2. I've got to thank John and Jessica from the What's Up Weirdo podcast, as well as Brian Danhausen. Up next week, it's the Detroit Paranormal Expedition with Jeff and Todd and more. Check it out for yourself as Haunted Michigan continues next Monday.